Hello everyone, how you going? Welcome to why Canada's northernmost town exists. Now obviously we can see from the start here that it's just all the way up the top, and so I'm curious to see why anyone would even want to live there in the first place.
3,461 kilometers, or 2,150 miles from Canada's capital of Ottawa, lies Canada's northernmost permanently inhabited town, Grice Fjord. This small town in the northern region of Nunavut is just 1,500 kilometers from the North Pole and lies well into the Arctic Circle.
Wow.
With no roads connecting Grice Fjord to the rest of Canada, having one of the coldest climates in the world with an average temperature of just 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit or 16.5 degrees Celsius, and a polar winter which lasts for over 2 months, resulting in 24-hour darkness. You may be wondering why anybody would choose to live in this extreme civilization.
Well, yeah, I absolutely am, because all of the things that he just mentioned are ridiculous. The fact that it, for one, just has an average temperature of minus 16 degrees Celsius, and the fact that they have just 2 months of straight darkness, I honestly don't know if you can really understand what that's like. I mean, I guess you obviously, it seems as though they have some lights, but really just to walk outside, or hopefully you don't have to walk outside because it's going to be minus 50 or something, but to just be generally just in darkness for 2 months, that must really just change your entire psychology. And even just the fact that it is, I think, twice as far to the capital than it is to the North Pole.
3,461 kilometers.
Yeah, 3,461 compared to 1,500. It's way closer to the North Pole than it is to anything else.
The settlement of Grice Fjord was created in 1952 by the Canadian government to establish Canadian sovereignty in the Arctic. Canada wanted to assert their dominance in the Arctic during the Cold War to take control of largely uninhabited land. The Canadian government promised improved living conditions for many of the Inuit tribe already living in the Nunavut region. The Inuit were assured plentiful wildlife, homes, and game to hunt, but as the Inuit were relocated to Grice Fjord, none of that was very true.
Oh, okay. Honestly, I'm just still baffled by the fact that just look at this landscape. How can anyone live there? I don't understand. Unless you were just put in a warmed box for your entire time that you were there, how does anyone actually function and operate in a climate like this? As it honestly just looks like an alien world with the domes and just complete whiteout everywhere. I mean, I guess it makes sense that the military just wants as much land and control as possible, so regardless of whether it's minus 20 degrees or positive 60, they just tend to go there. But either way, it is just such a foreign environment to me, and I just don't understand how anyone does it.
The Inuit came into an Arctic tundra climate with no homes and very little food options available. To make matters even worse, the Inuit were promised to be returned to their original homes after a year of staying in Grice Fjord. But this offer later became withdrawn, as this would have damaged Canada's claim to sovereignty in the area. It was clear the Inuit were either going to have to learn how to adapt, or death would surely follow. It wasn't until 41 years later, in 1993, where the Canadian government finally held hearings to investigate this relocation program that led to many Inuits' unfortunate death.
Well, I certainly didn't expect that to be part of this video. I think I just assumed that it would have been a scientific research base that the Canadian government has set up just to do all kind of Arctic things, from observing all the wildlife to just ice sheets and how the entire atmosphere is about it, all those kind of things. Not that it was going to come from a place of war and even just a seat.
Hearings resulted in the Canadian government finally giving $10 million in Canadian dollars to the residents of Grice Fjord to evenly distribute amongst themselves. Finally, in 2010, Canada issued a formal apology for the relocation, just a shy 58 years later after the relocation program was implemented.
Is that what it looked like in the beginning? No way! Like I said, I couldn't even live there in the modern day one, let alone that. That is literally just igloos that the government supposedly set up for homes for these people. I wonder how many it was. I don't think he said.
The population of Grice Fjord is currently 129 permanent residents.
Okay.
This is only one person less than the Grice Fjord population in 2011, which was 130 residents. Grice Fjord does receive some tourists each year, normally coming in for the summer months. The only way in and out of Grice Fjord is their singular airstrip that accompanies only one destination. This destination is Resolute, Canada, which is a 148-mile flight and only takes about an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's only an hour and a half, but it barely gets you any other way. You might as well just fly a little bit further, surely. Did it show in that map? Yeah, look at that. We cannot even see the bottom of Greenland. I mean, I don't know how to say that. Iqaluit? Oh god, that's how it's kind of phonetically spelled and how I butchered it. But you're not even able to fly all the way to there, let alone just all the way back to any major city down in the mainland of Canada. That's just insane. I mean, I wonder if it's icy all year round, because that photo here certainly seems to show it not being icy. I can only imagine that it is just very, very cold. it's probably like 5 degrees instead of -2 on average, and that just makes the snow retreat a little bit. But either way, what was it, 110 I believe?
The population of Grice Fjord is currently 129 permanent residents.
So 129 residents and they had $10 million. I guess that makes sense where it's only $10 million now. I was going, that seems like nothing, but I guess each of them are getting not 100 grand, like 80 grand each or something like that. And I understand that it can be quite difficult to quantify what happened to these people in terms of a monetary standpoint, but I guess 100 grand each is a starter.
Resolute is the nearest settlement and is where many of the Inuit tribe were forced to relocate from during the Cold War.
Oh.
Canadian North is the only airline that services this flight, but doesn't offer it too often, with an average of just 9 flights in and out every month.
That's more than I thought.
Surrounded by snow-capped mountains, the Grice Fjord airstrip has one of the most difficult approaches for aircrafts that require only the most experienced pilots.
Oh yeah. Well, honestly, that's a lot more flights than I would have thought. I thought he was going to say 9 flights a year, and I was going to be like, okay, I guess it makes sense in terms of it. There's only 129 people, so there can't be that much traffic going back and forth, but 9 flights a month. I mean, it's not the cheapest thing being $800 and $700 just for, what, an hour flight. That is a very, very expensive domestic flight. But I guess in a way, most of the time you're just paying for your own private jet. You know, you got the pilot and you, and that's it.
Sometimes in the summer months, the bay will thaw and then the residents can use their fishing boats to reach nearby hunting grounds or to hunt mammals in the sea. Sea fishing is potentially the only reason the Inuit were able to survive in Grice Fjord, as after being relocated here in 1952, the Inuit discovered that they were very close to the beluga whale migration routes.
Ooh.
These beluga whales would provide food for the entire community for many months and were easy to preserve given the extremely cold, freezer-like temperatures.
Yeah.
Aside from the villagers' own boats, once a year, a Canadian government ship, known as a sea lift, would arrive in Grice Fjord with much needed supplies and fuel. Supplies for new infrastructure or vehicles would come in once a year on this sea lift.
Wow.
This is quite the difference from most communities in North America, where Amazon delivers just about any product to you in a matter of a couple days.
What? They even deliver up to there? Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm not talking about the Fjord because they just said that they don't, but Amazon delivers to just rural places all the way up to there. That really just puts it into perspective for me, because I know that people are saying, oh yeah, you can just kind of get next day shipping and it'll arrive no matter where you are in the world, except for this one place, but just no matter where you are in the world, and it really is that. But no, the fact that the ship delivers a year worth of essential supplies, you wouldn't want to leave anything off the list, because what did he say? I guess he said there was fuel and vehicles, but I wonder, I guess they would be fine for water with snow, you just boil it. And then also just going back to the fishing, that is an incredible ability to, I guess, use the land. I mean, hopefully it's not overfished or anything like that, but in terms of people just finding any way to survive they can, honestly, it's pretty incredible. And I wonder how they first discovered it, if they knew of that migration route or if they moved up there and then found it out.
As for land travel, most residents use all-terrain vehicles in the summer, such as ATVs and pickup trucks.
Okay.
Other than during the summer months, the main modes of transportation include snowmobiles and dog sledding. The economy of Grice Fjord is rather small, with a town only having one grocery store. Grice Fjord has a cooperative store that is essentially a grocery store that is owned by the people who use it. The residents of Grice Fjord get to decide on what foods and products will be stocked on the shelves, where those items are purchased, and the quality standards that both the products and the vendors need to meet.
Wow. Well, in this circumstance, it sounds pretty good, because then you just have so much control. You're not limited to certain things. I mean, I guess you're probably still limited, but you can just have full control over this versus that. And when you only have 129 people, I can imagine that it's maybe not the easiest thing, but it's very doable to do something like that, to run the entire shop. I don't know who pays for it in terms of the first place. How is that organized? That would be interesting. And actually, looking at this shelf, I can imagine that it's virtually only long life stuff that comes in on that ship. Is that what the essentials are? I guess you have the plane if nothing else, but overall it just makes so much sense that this tiny isolated town would just be so independent.
This cooperative store is usually run by the residents of Grice Fjord, but the employees hadn't been filing financial papers, attending meetings, and most importantly, failing to stock the groceries.
Oh no, I was just so hopeful for it. Going, oh, that's awesome that you can just have full control and just dictate what is actually going to be coming into your area and what your diet is going to be consistent of. Because like I said, you're so isolated, but if you can just be independent in that regard, that's just great. You can just maintain your entire way of life however you want to live it. But then for it to be not stocked, I guess that's like, oh, damn it. Because from what he seemed to be saying, it was kind of mismanaged to where you have empty shelves, and I guess financially it just wasn't being run correctly. And so it would just be an awesome thing if it can be run properly, but just independently by them.
For many of them, having control of the co-op serves as a symbol of the community's independence, something that they value greatly. The community leader mentioned that they would like to deal with a territorial government as little as possible. The government having control of the local co-op hasn't been all that bad, however. Many important items such as milk and perishables that hadn't been on shelves for a while are now back on the shelves and available for purchase. In addition, the government has been able to keep the co-op store consistently open, something that wasn't happening when the store was independently owned.
See, that's where it's so difficult, because it sounds like from that side that would be a great thing. It's open, it's stocked, you've got all the things that you might need, but then the people are just going, no, get out of here, we don't want you. And so I guess it's just trying to find a balance between just providing enough support to keep it open and viable, but then just not coming in and just steamrolling the entire operation. That is one hell of a fine line, and especially if they just don't want to deal with the entire government, which makes sense given their history. But man, I just do not envy that position to be in.
The government currently has a 6-month lease on the co-op store and is able to renew the lease for 3-month periods. The Canadian government doesn't want to hand back control of the co-op until an audit is completed. Because the community is so small, it is no one person's fault that the store went into debt, but until an audit is completed, the residents need to have a community meeting, and the community needs to find out how much debt the co-op has accumulated.
Right, so how do you go into debt as a store? I guess people just take things without paying for them. And I guess with just being, well, I guess hopefully in the grand scheme of things, a very self-governed community, you just have people that are just sharing their resources, going, yeah, sure, you can take this, but then when it comes to running a store, you need to be able to pay for things to keep the entire thing rolling over. I mean, the only thing that I am curious about is how does this guy know so much about it? Because it seems like it's so isolated that, I don't know, you wouldn't really be able to get much information out of it. I mean, I guess there would be reporting, and given that it's flights to and fro 9 times a month, that is still blowing my mind. But 9 times a month, there's definitely a little bit going on. But still, for just some random guy to know this much, it's honestly impressive, if nothing else.
Aside from this local convenience store, another source of the residents' income relies on guided hunting and outfitting operations on nearby land. The region that Grice Fjord is in, Nunavut, actually features some of the most exotic and highly prized hunting in the world. Mammals that live in this region include extremely dangerous polar bears, abundant caribou, walruses, and the healthiest and least threatened population of wolves in the world. Aside from hunting from these mammals, residents will sell traditional clothing, carvings, and Inuit crafts, typically to outsiders visiting this Arctic community.
I just don't know how I feel about that, because for polar bears, for instance, they're just such a threatened species. They're just getting diminished. And so when you were just going out hunting these exotic creatures or just running things for just random tourists to come in, it's just such a complicated circumstance, because I guess it's a way of life in terms of hunting for them, but then for outsiders to be coming in and providing a revenue stream just through exotic hunting, surely that's just not right.
There's not a ton of opportunity for economic growth in the Grice Fjord area, especially due to the frequent avalanches and rockfalls of the nearby mountains, which limits the room for expansion. One benefit to living in Grice Fjord, however, is that the community is extremely safe from crime. A Simon Fraser University study found that Grice Fjord has the lowest rate of criminal offenses of all communities in Canada examined in 1992.
Well, I guess that certainly makes sense, because you can just point your finger across the room and go, yep, that was the one that did it. There's only 129 people. Everyone is going to know everyone. And so unless people are trying to work together to cover it up, everyone's just going to be like, well, I saw you last night, and you last night, and you last night, and you weren't here, so I guess it's you.
This is good to know, considering Grice Fjord only has a singular emergency vehicle, which is actually out of service with a missing wheel until a mechanic is able to fly in and repair the pickup truck used for emergency services. As mentioned before, Grice Fjord is one of the coldest communities in the entire world, with an average yearly temperature of just 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 16.5 degrees Celsius. The winters last almost the entire year, while the summers are very cool and short. February is the coldest month on Grice Fjord, with an average temperature of negative 34 degrees Celsius or negative 29.2 degrees Fahrenheit.
Look at that. That is just some freezing temperatures year round. No, I guess July and August aren't freezing temperatures, but they're bloody close to it. But just a look at December, January and February, minus 30, minus 33 and minus 34, and March, minus 31. But then for July to have the warmest month at 2 degrees Celsius. Oh man, it's basically still freezing at that point. Like honestly, I'm sure they're just, if you're in the shade, it's going to be freezing cold, and then in the sun, it's probably 2 degrees.
Grice Fjord is often referred to as the place that never thaws, given the temperature rarely breaks the freezing mark. The community has built water and plumbing pipes above ground to avoid the pipes from freezing.
Oh, yeah.
Water has to be continuously running through these pipes to avoid them from freezing up. At the end of the day, it is truly hard to conceptualize how difficult it is to live in Canada's northernmost town. Grice Fjord probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Canada's desire to claim control of the Arctic during the Cold War. Fortunately, the residents of Grice Fjord have developed a frontier-like mindset that has helped them to survive and prosper in such a harsh tundra-like climate. All 129 residents feel as though they are one big family and couldn't imagine living elsewhere. Do you think you could live in Grice Fjord?
No. Absolutely not. That place is not for me. There were just too many things that I'm just completely alien to where I just would not be able to survive more than 10 minutes on this place. But either way, it is a very impressive thing that they've just managed to survive. And even just doing things like this where you're going, hang on, let's just not build our plumbing in the ground, because then it's going to explode onto the ground and we're going to have to dig it back up again. So we do it above ground, and then hopefully it doesn't freeze over. I mean, I don't understand how you constantly have water going through a pipe, because surely there's an end stop. But hey, like I said, it's certainly not my area of expertise, and so I'm just going to leave it to them because they clearly know what they're doing in that regard. But no, that's an insane video. I cannot believe it. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's been the smoothest ride. There have definitely been some problems within the entire community from the get-go based on the entire reason it was set up, but I guess they've just done their best, and it's amazing that this entire community has come together, all 129, 130, I'm sure it fluctuates in around that range, has just been able to survive on this place for, I guess, 70 years now. I think he said it was 1952, and so yeah, 70 years of just living in the place that never thaws is honestly an insane metric to begin with, let alone the fact that we're just so isolated from the rest of the world. It's not like you're living there for 70 years but you're getting help every day. No, you get one ship a year, 9 flights a month, and that is it. And so I guess overall I just have to give credit to this video because it certainly answered why Canada's northernmost town exists. I just still don't understand how it exists and how it has existed for so long, just being so isolated. These people are just incredible, if nothing else. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm going to call it there. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the YouTube algorithm things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, then make sure to go check out all the other ones I've done. Also, make sure to go check out the original video down in the description below. Or hey, maybe even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.